or at least I came up with the phrase hybrid farming because it sounded cool at the time, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And that is because I know so many agents through the years have developed what they consider their farms, and how they've turned that into their farm is essentially by mailing to everyone in that neighborhood for months and months and years. And what ends up happening is they end up becoming known, if you will, as the neighborhood expert. And so what I didn't like about that way that whole process works, and for those that have been obviously following Mike Ferry, he kind of laughs and jokes about the agents that do farming because it takes a long time, it takes a lot of money, and the results are somewhat spotty. So I said, okay, there's got to be a way to be able to break into a market with essentially using the techniques that we know best, which is sales skills, phone prospecting, etc., with low cost and faster, more predictable results. And so that's where I came up with the idea of hybrid farming. Now, the reason why I believe it is successful is because back in the day when I would sell a listing, I would go and knock around that listing, and and give information to people about the home that I just sold. I'd share with them a little bit about the house and what it sold for, and it was always a very easy conversation. I always had a good rapport with everyone, and everyone was pretty appreciative of me doing that. And so back then, there was no such thing as gathering email addresses so you can set them up on campaigns and all that. And so there was no real, at that time, I wasn't trying to get email addresses and build a database. I was just trying to make some contacts, make a good impression, and ultimately hope that they would remember me when it came time to sell their home. Nowadays, we have so many sophisticated systems in one of our own, the system that we're using. There's actually value to just going and meeting someone, having a good conversation, and getting their email address. Where 7 or 8 years ago when I did this, there wasn't that value. The value was just, I hope you remember me when it comes time to sell because of what I just accomplished in your neighborhood. So I came up with this little thing called hybrid farming, and it goes hand in hand with our new technology and with the sync system, because it will do a lot of this work for you. Now, before I jump into it, I will tell you that the hybrid farming itself, which I'm going to cover with you, will not work unless you plan for it. And what I mean by that is it has to be in your schedule regularly. It has to be in your schedule either daily or weekly, or you pick one weekend a month to do this, or maybe you pick 2 Saturdays a month or 2 Fridays, whatever. I will tell you that is probably the biggest key and will also be the biggest challenge to making this effective. It has to be in your schedule. So one of the things that I think is going to be really cool when I sit down with you to review your business plan, we're going to look at, okay, what source are you adding? And, I'll look for certain pieces. And I know with most of them, including especially this one, we're going to say, okay, what is changing in your schedule in order to implement this new source? And so I'll help you with that piece. But what I wrote at the top of this piece of paper is, it will not happen unless you're planning for it and it's in your schedule. And so the first things first when it comes to hybrid farming is, number one, to identify a target. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just now. So what does identifying a target really mean? Identifying a target is identifying a neighborhood of anywhere from as low as 50 and no more than 200 homes. That seems to be the sweet spot for this program to work. They got to have at least 50 homes, but certainly no more than 200, because if they had 500 homes, let's say, you wouldn't be able to get everyone as frequently. So I want to, and by the way, if you have a neighborhood that has 500 homes, well then you just, you keep the streets together. You just eliminate some streets that are kind of on the outskirts of that neighborhood. So I want to identify a neighborhood or a target of anywhere from as low as 50, has to be a minimum of 50 to be effective, and as high as 200. And the ideal price point that I'm going after is going to be anything from 150 to 400. 150 to 400 is an ideal price point. And the reason why, you may be saying, well, if I'm going to put all this effort in, I want $1 million listings. Okay? Number one, less and less of those actually go on the market. Number two, less and less of those actually sell. The third thing in terms of identifying a target, the reason why I'm suggesting 150 to 400 is because generally speaking, you want to be in a neighborhood, ideally where it's a second home for someone. Okay, that's a crucial point, a second home for someone. The reason for that is because you're going to put in the same amount of effort because chances are there's going to be another transaction out of it, right? If it was their final home, there might not be another transaction out of it because most of those people are moving to Florida or Arizona or into a home or something like that. You want to try to identify an area where it's a second home for someone. Now, fortunately, because interest rates have been so low, a lot of these neighborhoods at $200,000 and $300,000, that is actually a first-time buyer nowadays, right? So you're going to just have to kind of use your best judgment on that. But ideally, what I would love is to have a $250,000 listing sale or a $300,000 listing sale and a $400,000 to $500,000 buyer. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a second home as long as it's hitting that sweet spot. And the sweet spot is you're increasing your chances of getting 2 transactions out of putting this work in. Okay, so I'm identifying a target where I know there's going to be 2 transactions on most sales. So I wrote down here, the goal with the hybrid farming is to be the neighborhood expert in as little amount of time possible for the least amount of money possible. This formula that I'm going to share with you will cause you to become the neighborhood expert in as little amount of time possible for as least amount of money possible. Now, most agents that I know that are afraid to talk to people and they just send out postcards every month, they spend thousands of dollars per month on their postcard mailing. Sometimes it's $500 to $1,000. Sometimes it's several $1,000s. You don't have to spend. My formula only has maybe 1 or 2 mailings. You don't have to spend anywhere near that. Okay, but and not only that, and this is the reason why Mike Ferry has always been so against the farming, is because it takes not months but years to get results. Where this formula will get results in 9 to 12 months. You'll actually start to see return on your time in 9 to 12 months. Having said that, if you go 6 months without getting anything from it, you can't stop. Right? 9 to 12. Once you get to month 8, 9, 10, 11, that's where you'll start to see the results from it. So the goal is to become the neighborhood expert in as little amount of time possible for the least amount of money as possible. Here's the formula for success with this hybrid farming. 12 attempts per year into a neighborhood should get you 4 to 5 contacts yearly. 12 attempts per year into a neighborhood will get you 4 to 5 contacts per year with each person in this neighborhood, right? So remember the definition of a contact, a decision-making adult whom we reach out to electronically, by phone, face-to-face, social media, etc., and they respond with something, anything. Remember, it can be get lost or, yep, I'd love to be on your list, whatever, right? They respond with anything. A decision-making adult whom we reach out to electronically, by phone, face, social media, etc., and they respond with anything. Again, you're not going to be able to talk, just because you're doing something once a month in this realm doesn't mean you're going to talk to everyone once a month. But what's nice about this is it involves a lot of phone work, and a voicemail is a good thing with this type of source, because it's just another way for them to hear you and to realize that you are the neighborhood expert. In fact, I would venture to go on a limb and say a voicemail from you is more powerful than them getting a postcard from Betty Lou that's been mailing to the neighborhood for 2, 3, 4 years, okay? So here's the tools needed. The Cole Crisscross Directory. Fortunately, we have that, okay? It's the Cole Crisscross Directory. Obviously, MLS access, you guys have that. You're going to need to create, and I can get with Lauren on this to create a simple one, because I have one saved in my computer that I used like 10 years ago. It literally looks like it was created on a typewriter. But it's basically a flyer that explains who you are and what company you're with and the services you provide and essentially what you're going to be giving to them over the course of the next 12 months. And that is market updates, market data, things that are happening in the neighborhood. And every time you use this flyer, on the back side of it is all of the listings, pendings, and sales that have taken place in their neighborhood in RealComp. So it's a very simple front and back, one-page flyer that'll have a nice presentation on the front of who you are. You know, if you live in the neighborhood, by the way, when we talk about identifying your farm, if you want to do the neighborhood you live in, there's a little bit more credibility with that. So the front side would say who you are, what you're doing, who you're affiliated with, you know, how we're successful, whatever. And then on the back side would have active listing sales. Anytime you're delivering a flyer, that's what that looks like. Obviously a telephone, and obviously sync. The one thing that's really cool about this method of getting business, the hybrid farming, is people are actually more willing to give you their email addresses when they feel like they're getting value in return. And so what's nice about this, in addition to the formula that I'm going to share with you here, is that you're going to have a system that's going to send something to them semi-regularly. So you're not only staying in front of them with market information and so forth, it's also hitting them up with a soft, not aggressive, very soft. I mean, things like, hey, it's spring, it's time to change your clocks forward. It's fall, it's time to change your clocks back. Hey, happy holidays, right? Just soft stuff. We actually have a soft drip campaign, if you will, that has that basically we've identified like 12 holidays throughout the year or something like that, and so it just drips on them in a soft way, in a nice way. Okay, it's not even really asking them for business or anything like that. So we said 12 attempts per year into a neighborhood is the formula, and you can't give up after 5, 6, 7 months because you're not going to get anything. I mean, you might get lucky and get something the first 4, 5, 3 months. By the way, when I went out and did the door knocking around a listing or sale, my goal was to get at least one lead out of that, right? If I went 10 doors to the left, 10 to the right, 20 across the street, my goal was to get at least one lead. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes I'd get someone that says, oh, funny, you should stop by. We're going to be selling soon. Or, hey, we're not selling right now, but we'll be selling in the spring, right? So you will get leads immediately, of course, but don't expect to see a big return on your time until you're about halfway through the first 5, 6 months. Okay, so here are your action items, and I've got a formula for each month of the year, and I'm going to share that with you now. Okay, so the month of January, you're going to start this in January, which obviously, for any of you that make the decision to choose hybrid farming as one of your additional sources of business, you're going to want to write these down. So your first attempt, if you will. So an attempt, I don't think I need to give you a definition of attempt, but really quickly, just for reference, an attempt is reaching out to someone. Okay, I don't care how you do it, reaching out to someone. Whether they respond or not, it doesn't matter. That's an attempt, right? You see the difference between an attempt and a contact. Contact must respond. Now it's a contact if they respond. So in January, my first round of attempts, if you will, would be a Happy New Year phone call and a market update of 20 of the previous year. Basically, a quick review of what has taken place in the year. Now, if you're wondering, well, what's the exact script, so forth, I'll put together the scripts for you. I have no problem doing that, but just use common sense. I mean, hey, Happy New Year. My name's Jeff. I'm the local realtor here in the neighborhood. I want to just share with you what took place in 2016. I won't take up too much of your time. We had X amount of homes come on the market. We had X amount of homes sell. Home prices went up by 5%. If there's anything I can do for you or anyone you know, hope you'll keep me in mind. Right? So I'm not like boring them to death with a ton of stuff. I'm just giving them the basics, especially on that first call. And of course, every time, this is really important with the hybrid farming, every time you talk to them, and use judgment, because you might have someone that you find that ends up answering every time you call. But every time you talk to someone, you want to remember to always ask for their email address. And how you ask for an email address is by convincing them that you're asking for it by providing value. So how do you do that? Very simple. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we get market updates and market data on a monthly basis. We know about homes that come on the market. We know about homes that come off the market. We know about homes that sell in your neighborhood. Would it be of value to you if I were to set you up on an email format every time something took place in your neighborhood, or every time something sells in your neighborhood, or a monthly market update, right? Pick one of those three that I just mentioned, by the way. Would that be of value to you? Yeah, would you like to know of what's been listed, what's been sold in your neighborhood on a monthly basis? Yes, that would be of value to me. Great, and you get your email addresses. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, we're doing all these callings and you're setting them up on a soft drift campaign. It doesn't matter, okay? You're gonna be calling them with market data. Sometimes you're gonna be stopping by. You'll see as I go through the rest of the months. Just get their email addresses and set them up on a soft drip campaign so you're staying in front of them. Okay, February. So far this year, I have written down here listings and sales that have taken place in the neighborhood so far this year. This is another phone call. Listings and sales that have taken place so far this year. This is another phone call. Remember, this won't be effective unless it's scheduled. So first things first, you have to identify the 50 to 200, however it is that you're going to consider part of your farm. And you need to figure out, I mean, just like I do with Don. Don, how many people do we have in the database? Okay, approximately how long will those calls last? Okay, 2 minutes. How many people in the database? How many days do we have between now and the end of the year? All right, so that means you need to make 13 calls, just using an example, Monday through Friday, every day between now and the end of the year. So you have to identify how many calls you'll have to make if you're going to spread it out. Or the alternative is you just pick 1 day a month or 2 days a month, and that's your hybrid farming day. So everyone's wired a little bit differently. Some of you may say, you know what, I really want to put it in my schedule from 9 to 9:30. I'm going to make 5 calls a day. And that's just going to be my calls for the month of January. But what you'll need to do, and I'll help you with this while we do your business planning review, is once you've identified, let's say the number is 100, okay, 100 divided by 20 working days a month is how many a day? 5. So 5 calls a day if you have 100 in your hybrid farm. Not too difficult. It'll probably take you from 9 to 9:15, 9:20 to get those calls in, right? So that, again, it goes back to identifying the target, how many contacts there are in that target, and then, of course, putting that into place either in a daily routine, or if you just pick 1 day a month and you're going to hit them all one day, that's fine too. So in February, we're calling and we're letting them know of listings and sales that have taken place so far this year. January was a market review of the previous year. February is what's going on so far this year. March is actually a little bit different. We go from calling to, in the month of March, we actually do door knocking and we introduce. Now, obviously, we know the weather in March can be a little sketchy sometimes, but generally speaking, there's at least one nice weekend or a few nice days in the month of March. Obviously, those would be the days that I would set aside for doing this part. And this is where you're actually going and visiting your 50, your 75, your 100, your 150, and knocking on their door, introducing yourself. By then, you've either had, if not 2 contacts, you've at least had 2 attempts, right? So they're not going to be like, who are you? Get off my porch. You've already left them something of value, even if it was on a voicemail. Okay, so March, I'm door knocking, introducing myself, letting them know of the listings and sales that have taken place in the last 30 days. And at that point in time, that's when you want to have that flyer handy. Right, you're handing that to them. Hey, here's a report of everything that's taken place in the last 30 days in the neighborhood. In the month of April, I'm just doing a spring market update phone call. This is a general one. Not necessarily what's going on in their neighborhood, more so what's going on in the entire market. Okay, there's a reason why I'm not calling and telling them everything in their neighborhood every single time. Do you guys know why that is?
So they can ask.
Well, that would be a good thing. Yeah, at some point they're going to say they could ask what's going on in the neighborhood, but that's not the actual reason. Why is it?
Nothing much has changed.
Nope. Why would I give them both neighborhood statistics 1 month and then the next month Southeast Michigan statistics?
Where they're moving to.
Okay, where they're moving to is good. No. Where I'm going with this is referrals. I work all over. I don't just work your neighborhood. All right, so I think the mistake a lot of agents make, especially the ones that do postcards and farming, is people actually start to get the impression that they only work that one particular neighborhood. So you don't want them to think that you can only help them in that neighborhood. You want them to think that you're a market expert in all of Southeast Michigan or West Michigan or wherever it is that you serve. So that's why I'm alternating between a general market update and a neighborhood market update. So in April, I'm doing a spring general market update phone call. Again, back to kind of what I said before. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. You have to decide, depending on your personality, if it's 100 people in the farm, are you a 5 a day call type of person, or are you just pick 1 day a month and knock them all out? Because you can, I mean, think about it. If there's 100, let's say your number is 100, divided by 10 hours a day, that's 10 per, that's 10 per hour. You could easily get 10 calls, 10 attempts per hour, but you better believe from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, that's all you're doing that day. So you're going to have to determine what's going to work best for you and your schedule. May, I have written down, May is open house month. As you guys know, as a company, we always do a big open house extravaganza starting in May. Call and give open houses in neighborhood and surrounding area. Hold an open house, door knock neighbors. Now, obviously, if you have a listing in the neighborhood, that's ideal, right? You're going to hold that open. But what I would do in this particular case, because other realtors start holding because open houses start to become more popular in the spring months, you're actually calling them, letting them know of other, because you can pull right up in Real Comp. Open houses, actually you can pull it right from the company website. Open houses taking place in or around the particular neighborhood. Even if there are none in the neighborhood, just give them the open houses that are taking place in the city, in the community. Okay? Again, it shows that you're an expert in the market. Next, the month of June. Now we're back to a neighborhood update phone call. So we went from a spring market update, that's a general one in April, the open house conversations in May, and then a neighborhood market update. Now, by the way, when I say open house conversations, one other thing you could add to May is, and you guys have all seen it, I put a video out a few years ago, and we'll probably start using it again. Here's the top 5 things you can do to get your home ready for an open house, right? You're going to have some people that are actually thinking of selling or that might value that call. That's a good conversation to have as well. The June is a neighborhood market update, so now that's more of a specific. Here's been what's listed and sold in the last 30 days or since we last talked, or in this case, you'd probably say the last 60 days. Because you're not giving them one in May. In July, you're doing a similar to like what we talk around Thanksgiving, around the holidays. In July, you're just doing a simple Happy 4th of July message. Okay, you're not necessarily giving market updates. You want to mix it up a little bit so it doesn't get too redundant sounding. So I figured July, it's the middle of the year. This would be a good Happy 4th of July message. And obviously you would need to make those calls July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So you'd have to schedule that in the beginning of the month. August, you're getting out door knocking again. You're going to do activity in the neighborhood. That's the one page flyer with the front and back. The success we've had so far this year. And oh, by the way, here's everything that's sold in the neighborhood in the last 60 days. You might as well just get in the habit of saying the last 60 days. And there's another reason why I did it that way is because some neighborhoods, you might not have any listings or sales in 30 days. If that happens regularly, I'd say go find another neighborhood because you didn't identify a good target. Remember, the target is ideally we want something between 150 and 400,000 where stuff's turning pretty quickly. So August is the door knock activity in the neighborhood. September is a phone call with a summer market overview. Hey, here's what took place over the last 3 months this summer in the market. We're really excited about the fall, whatever, a summer market overview. And that's a phone call. And remember, all of these messages, what you're going to want to do for all of these messages is think of a brief voicemail that you can leave if they don't answer. Okay, so you'll just want 2 or 3 bullet points and a voicemail that's no more than 90 seconds, 102 minutes max. Okay.
There's live broadcasts out there, so if you really wanted to try to hit those people, and maybe I wouldn't do this every single time you're calling them, but maybe like every third, just do a recording of your message and do a live broadcast to the entire neighborhood, and you could hit that entire neighborhood in 5 minutes.
That would be a good holiday one, like the 4th of July one and the holiday one. Yeah, because you're not really sharing any information. So live broadcast is a quick way to get right into their voicemail box, absolutely. And that's just an app. Anybody could go and download that app. All right, where was I at? October phone call. Okay, so October is a phone call, prep for fall market, holiday handlers, best time to list. This is actually a conversation that I want to have with someone. Hey, I'm calling to let you know because a lot of times people think that spring is the best time to list. I'm actually calling to let you know that the fall is the best time to list and spring is actually the best time to buy a home. And the reason for that is A, B, and C. And if you know anyone, hopefully you keep us in mind, right? Again, I'm keeping these short and sweet. That's a phone call in October. November is a phone call with activity in the neighborhood again. You're seeing a pattern here. We're doing the activity in the neighborhood about every 60 days. And then finally, December is a phone call, and it's just generic happy holidays, best wishes for a prosperous new year. And if you'd like, this would be your one, at this point in time, you've had 5, 6, 7 conversations with people. You're feeling good about your rapport level. You got their email addresses. Obviously, you have their home address. I have written down here, you may want to consider adding them to your holiday card list. Everyone has a holiday card list. You're probably not going to add all 150 or all 100. You're probably going to identify the 20 people that, by this time, after 10, 11, 12 attempts, you're going to know who's supporting you, who's feeling good about the way you're going to identify all that stuff. And you're obviously going to be updating your system in sync, so you're going to know who the people are that you might want to target and send a holiday card to. But if not, everyone should get a holiday message. Best wishes, happy holidays, that type of thing. And you could use Sly Broadcast for that. Sly Broadcast, that's SLY Broadcast. And questions on hybrid